Welcome to Culture Before Content. Culture Before Content, from Music for All and presented by Yamaha. And now, here's your host, David Duarte.
Hey, welcome to the show, or welcome back. Summer is almost over and fall is coming. Anyway, I'm David Duarte, your host for today's episode of Culture Before Content. We're so glad you could join us on the Music for All podcast network. Before diving in, thank you to Yamaha, our national presenting sponsor, for their incredible support. At Music for All and for our entire Culture Before Content community, our mission is to create, provide, and expand positively life-changing experiences through music, because that is what we do every single day. I'm sure it's on our mind. It's Sunday. It can't help it but be on our mind. Looking forward to the week. Now, let's talk about why we're all here today. Culture. Whether you join us via Facebook Live or YouTube or listen later on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, we're thrilled to have you with us. Here's how you can stay connected and show your support. Are you watching on Facebook Live and YouTube? Please like and share the broadcast. If you're tuning on Facebook Live or YouTube, you can just share it out, send it to your friends, whether you're watching it now or watching it later. Send it to people. It's kind of cool. And if you're a listener versus a viewer, we appear on Apple Podcast and Spotify, so you can listen on the go. You can find the audio broadcasts of our episodes on both Apple and Spotify typically it's about around Mondays in the afternoon. If you're subscribed, you just know because it just pops up. I love popping them in the car and listening to them during the course of the week. So stay connected through the week by diving deeper into our podcast with new episodes. And since it's summer, now's a chance to go back and review all of our 20 episodes. But it is so good to have you here and just welcome everyone back. So just a little summation. I'm so excited. We've had 20 shows. We've had various guests. Take time, go back, maybe review some of those things, take a listen and, bring some of that culture to your classroom, because now's a good time to set those standards and move away. All right, so let's introduce our guest for the week and get the show underway. Today, we have from Bartlett High School in Tennessee, we have Mr. Trevor Rundell. Please welcome him to the show.
Hey, David, how's it going?
Hey, Trevor, thank you so much for being on the show. Good to see you and good to meet you today.
Yeah, you bet. I'm excited to be here.
So let's see. I think we were talking a little bit. We've already got our first comment. We're so excited to hear Mr. Rundell on our show. He's the one that gets it. I'm so excited to hear about you. So let's just start with a little bit of getting to know each other and introduce yourself to the audience. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Trevor. Tell us about your band life.
So, like you said, my name's Trevor Rundell. I'm the band director at Bartlett High School. I'm one of the band directors at Bartlett High School. I'm 30 years old. I'm about to go into my 9th year of teaching. I have a little bit of an interesting story. So my first 2 years of teaching right out of college, I was the assistant at Bartlett. And then I got the opportunity to go back and teach at Siegel High School, which is where I went to high school as a student. And I was there for a year, and then my predecessor retired, and the principals called me and said, they think it would be great if I came back. So me and my wife ended up moving back here, and we've been here ever since. I guess my first year back was 2019, had about 3/4 of a year. COVID hit, did the COVID year, and then I just wrapped up my 5th year and starting my 6th, kind of as the guy. We've got a pretty big team here. My wife is actually one of the other band directors. So we get to work together every day. Andrew Pejos is one of the other band directors. He's new with us this year. And then we have a district percussion director, Carrie Radcliffe, who they all bring a lot to the team. And it's definitely a really fun team atmosphere here at Bartlett.
Wow, sounds like you have a bunch of support. Is it support that you do through your band program? Is it district support?
Yeah, certainly. So when I started, it was just 2 band directors. We were able to grow into a 3rd position, and then the district-wide percussion program. We have 3 middle schools that all feed us, and so there was a real need with the scheduling. We're not a one-campus high school. We have a freshman academy that is 7 miles away, and then 10 through 12 is here. So there was a big need in terms of the scheduling pieces to have someone dedicated to that. So we've kind of built that over time, and every year it's been a little bit better, a little bit more of what we want to see. So yeah, it's really great. The district's super supportive. I've had some great principals and administrators at the district office level, and we're just really blessed to be here.
Yeah, and speaking of COVID, how was the hit on your school? Did it survive well? Are the numbers good? Did you?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So we dipped off a lot at first. Really just kids wanted to be in a performing ensemble and they didn't just want to be in a class. So the initial hit was pretty significant. I think the way that we were able to structure things, we were on a hybrid model. So we only saw kids a couple times a week. We saw everybody virtually 2 or 3 times a week. And so we really, in the absence of like a performance setting, we really just dug into fundamentals. And I think we came out the other side a lot stronger. Right now we're sort of in our second wave of COVID hit, which I think everybody on various levels is dealing with. So I feel like we're getting hit maybe a little bit later, but we're just really trying to put our heads together as a team and really dig in again to the fundamentals that kind of got us through it, to make sure everybody is on the same page and can move forward together.
Yeah, it's just funny you bring that up because I was doing a evaluation clinic, adjudication clinic this last Friday. And that was one of the topics that just came up and we started talking because, it always feels like when you're at your own school, like it's only me and everyone else is doing,
Sure.
You hear everything. Because the other thing is too, you listen to the bands and the bands all sound mostly fantastic. So like when you hear one of the best programs around here talking about how it's hit them and the numbers you're funny you said the second wave because that's exactly what we were talking about. This is the set of kids that are coming in freshmen this year are the kids that kind of didn't have a 5th grade experience if they started in 5th grade band. So these are kids that kind of didn't get 5th grade, sort of got 5th grade. They came to 6th grade, so they're a little behind. So we're talking about, we still have one more year before we have kids that started in 5th grade, and then it's going to start to normalize. And we still got another 5 or 6 years before those normal numbers start to come back. But it's, it leads me to the topic of why we're here, which is culture. So, in getting to meet all of my guests, I think the neat thing that I get to realize is that everyone does things differently, but we all have the same output. So, some of the things that I'm going to talk about today is really your foundation and your belief of how your band has put together culturally. So can you talk about like your band, what is the culture of your band? Let's start with who you are as a band director and some of the beliefs that you have that make your band program work.
Sure. Well, I'll take just sort of off what you said. One thing that I tell everybody, if I'm talking to band about, we just got done with band camp. I had a couple college kids on staff with us, and they're of course asking questions because they eventually want to be good at what they do. And the biggest thing that I tell everybody is everyone's situation is different. And what works for one person and in one situation won't necessarily work. It might, but won't necessarily work for a different situation. In fact, I think we've all seen situations where really super effective teachers that have had a long history of success maybe go to a different program and don't find the same success for whatever reason. Maybe that could be they're approaching things the same way in a different community and it's just not working out, or it could be other differences. But all of that to say, the things that I'm going to talk about, I hope that people hear them and that they try them. It's definitely not, it's not a one fit all solution, but here at Bartlett, we really try to preach our core values and like our vision constantly. So every time the parents are in front of me, it doesn't matter if it's a concert, if it's a booster meeting, if it's a regular parent meeting, I always, go over what our mission statement is and what our core values are. And what our core values are distilled down to 3 things for us. The first is citizenship. And it's something that we preach to the kids all the time. It doesn't matter if it's in concert band or marching band or jazz band or whatever. But we're doing 3 things for 3 people. We do things for the people who came before us, who bled and sweat and cried and all of the things to make the program what it is. We're doing the people who are going to come after us and make sure that we're being good stewards of what's currently going on. and hopefully advancing it. And then, of course, we're doing it for the current people. We call them the guy down the row. So that's the first thing, is citizenship excellence. Obviously we're trying to be the best at whatever we're doing. Again, if it's in jazz band, concert band, the top band, our wind symphony, or our second band, the concert band, or the freshman band, or the marching band, we're trying to be the best versions of ourselves with it, and sort of teaching the hard lessons that go along with that. And then the last one is community, and just that we want to enjoy the time here. We want to make friends, because ultimately I think that we're not going to be thinking 30 years from now about how much concert F Mr. Rundell made us play. They're going to be thinking about the friends that they made along the way and the memories that they made. So those are sort of our three core values here.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to my statement that I believe is people remember you for how you make them feel. So when you're teaching, we all get into this whole thing about band is everything and everything. But in the longer you go away from high school, the more you remember the feelings of what made band happen. But of course, what we do in band is important. It's just that those feelings help us get those things through. So I have a question for you. So I like playing a game sometimes, and I call it truth or belief. What is a truth that you have about your core values? Like, what is the one truth that you believe, like the one thing that every kid must know? What is the truth in your program?
Oh man. I really think it goes back to that first one, is that we're doing things for three people: the ones who came before us, the ones who will come after us, and the ones who are currently standing beside us. I think if there's one thing that the kids need to get out of Bartlett, is that, and hopefully that's something that they can take whatever walk of life that they go into. I know a lot of people, their why as a music educator is we want to create music consumers, or people who will advocate for music education. And those things are certainly important. But for me, it's about creating people that whatever they're going to do in the future, that I gave them tools while they were in the program that's going to make them really successful at whatever that is.
And then my second part, what is something that you believe, like something that it may not be a truth. What is something that you believe makes your program function with these core values? Like, what is a belief? Like, for example, I believe that my students, how they feel in the classroom is the direct reason why we're successful on the notes, the rhythms, and all those things. That's just a belief. Is there any beliefs that you have that might stand out that help bring this foundation together?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that the staff here at Bartlett is more stubborn than 99% of staffs. And that stubbornness is what leads the kids to be able to do the things that they wind up doing, or what we have done the last couple of years. Is that sort of what you're looking for?
Oh no, like I said, it's just getting to know each other and talking. But
Sure.
because then you said something else that you had 1 year where you were the assistant, and then you got a chance to take over. That is amazing. Because when you take over cold, you usually come in and you're the new person and such. So how maybe some of those things. How much did it help to come in? And then when you took over as director of bands, how much was already in place? How much did you change anything? Or I'm sure that, your school has been successful for a very long time. So what are the things that you did to help build that foundation? Or did you have to do much change, because it's obvious that things are going extremely well at your school.
Sure. Bartlett's really interesting because Bartlett went about a 20-year stint in like the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, where they were among the best band in the state. In the 80s, early 90s, Bartlett was in terms of marching band was the band to beat. They went through a little bit of a down cycle that had to do with a lot of things, including sort of the school system climate in West Tennessee. And then I kind of came in at a time where there was a lot of potential there. It maybe wasn't being managed in the best way. That's the best way that I can really put it. So coming in as a new teacher, I was super excited, as we all are. My hair was on fire. I was really passionate because of my previous experiences and what I saw in the program. But also I was young too, and I stepped in a lot of holes in terms of just the way that I was as a young teacher. Again, I was super passionate, and that passion a lot of times didn't come off in the best ways. But it certainly, the kids saw the passion, and there were about half or more of the kids saw that it was passion, that I was passionate about what I was doing, passionate about them being successful. And then there were the other half of the kids that didn't see that. And so it definitely was a double-edged sword, leaving and then coming back. The program did shrink that year because there were a few kids that weren't really excited about the standard that they knew that they were going to be held to, because they hadn't really been held to that standard the previous year. But on the opposite side, there were a lot of kids that I think knew from previous experiences with me what could be done, and they were excited about that. So like I said, double-edged sword. It was definitely interesting. I guess is the best way I can put
Yeah.
it.
But I think it's okay to make mistakes. Even when you're young, even when you're an old teacher, I think it's okay to mistake. I think I actually learn much more from my mistakes, because the way I perceive a mistake is I'm giving 100% making that mistake, and it turns out to be, something that I react. I don't regret my mistakes. I might regret what the outcome was, but I don't regret anything unless it's something, I would never be intentional on trying to make things happen. But when you walked into your program and you said that the numbers shrank, I think that's okay. I mean, definitely, I'm sure that the numbers have come around now. And so something happened from that mistakes. Like, and I'm just to personalize a little bit. I walked into the program at Deer Valley years ago, and I was young and kind of, well, still kind of, like, I wish I was young, hot headed. And I was telling the kids, I have my values of every kid must learn all scales, thirds, and arpeggios, and all 12 keys. And I said just scales. And I had a couple of kids run down on that day and go drop band. And then I learned that my intentions were right, but my vision was already in place, but I hadn't shaped theirs. And that was kind of like the start of the process. So I lost a few of those kids at the beginning, but in the end, the people that stayed, some people did come back eventually, but that was where I said, making those mistakes, I think, is okay. I mean, is there any mistake that I mean, I think it's okay. Do you think it's okay that mistakes happen?
Yeah, for sure. One of my best friends, Jeremy Smith, who he and I write a lot of shows together. And one thing that he always reminds me, I'm on the phone with him constantly talking about how rehearsals are going. And the one big thing that he says to me is, like, it's okay to fail, just don't waste the failure. And so I really make sure, and I bring that to the kids too. If we have a bad rehearsal because too many people were talking, we missed too many instructions, whatever, we round back up the next day, and it's like, it's okay that happened, because this way we can make sure we never have a rehearsal like that again. So yeah, I think it's totally fine when myself or any teacher makes mistake. What's not okay is letting the same mistake play out over and over and over and over again, and you see sort of the demolition that can happen from those repeated mistakes without fixing it and without making a concerted effort to change.
Yeah, I think another one of my belief on that is that no matter what, I am the person that must own the mistake, whether it's mine or not, and I still have to make it so that we're pushing forward and learning from that situation or those mistakes. I can't always be right. I have to make sure that my program is right,
Sure.
so to speak. So that's citizenship. Now let's talk about excellence for a second. So in my version of excellence, you had to have some of your core values come to you and your band program. So what factors in your past shaped who you are to bring that excellence to your school?
Oh man, I really love this question. Not that I knew I was going to be asked it, but when people do ask it, I've had a lot of really great educators sort of shape me. And I think one of the biggest ones is I had the privilege of being on band camp staff at Franklin High School in 2013 through 2017, I think. And I just got to see David at work and see how he communicated his vision to the program, and really learned from him more than anything the value of fundamentals. I think the number two person that has played into it was my high school band director at Siegel. who we really didn't do much fundamentals at all. We did a lot of literature, and the way that he defined literature and refined literature, I definitely learned that from him. So it's sort of the perfect storm of, getting that experience in high school, and then as an older, wiser Trevor, seeing David Adelett work at Franklin. And being able to come into my own program and put both of those things at work simultaneously, I think has been massive for me, just as my development as a band director.
Yeah, for our audience out there, this is what's really odd. Two things. I met David on a phone call because he was trying to call me when I was a fine arts administrator, not realizing I had moved to Nashville. So when he called me, I was like 5 miles down the road from him. And that's my funny story. But all of you out there, just this week, go watch Franklin videos online. That band program is fantabulous. And there's it is always enjoyable to find band programs to watch. You always pick up something. So that's amazing. So when you took over did you change any of the fundamentals on the second year once you became the director? Did you keep things the same? What were your fundamental changes that you made?
Yeah, I think the biggest fundamental change is that there wasn't
fundamental changes.
Yeah, there wasn't really a fundamental program at Bartlett, so I was really able to start from scratch. And everything comes out of concert F for us. That's how we start every day. There's never going to be a rehearsal where we're not playing concert F on long tones, on various articulation patterns, talking about note shapes, talking about note length, talking about listening and blending and tuning and all of those things. And everything, I write my own fundamental packet. And
that was my next question.
Sure. Everything comes out of that concert F. So, all the lip slurs that we do, they start on concert F. The Remingtons that we do, they start on concert F. The flow studies patterns that we do, they all start on concert F. So that, and we spend a lot of time, especially at camp and throughout the first part of the years, making sure the kids understand the expectation. And we're not just playing this to warm up. And I tell the kids constantly, we don't warm up at Bartlett. That's something that you do when you get your horn out. The second that we are playing concert F, first thing in classes, we're working on fundamentals. We're working on individual tone, we're working on group tone, we're working on balance, we're talking about articulation, all of those things. And just, again, us being more stubborn than them until the point that they get to it. And it's really interesting because the fundamental thing, it's a long-term process, and it's sort of, you're trusting that you will see a difference in a couple of weeks. You'll see a difference in a month. But the gains are really, really, really small. And you're just trusting that 4 years from now, when you have that trumpet player that's been playing your fundamental program for 4 years, that he is going to be exponentially better than he would have been if you weren't at all. And that's been something really cool and really gratifying to see sort of come to fruition the last couple of years.
And what do you think has been one of the biggest factors of the excellence of your program?
I mean, I think it's that. I think it's the dogmatic way that we approach fundamentals. We went to Jacksonville, the Jacksonville BOA Jacksonville Regional in 2022, and we medaled, and that was actually the second regional that we had medaled at that season. And we won music ensemble. And there were some nationally, I think one went on that year to become a Grand National finalist. And there were other people who had been knocking on the doors of Grand National finals. And we won music ensemble at that show. And I had a lot of people come up to me at the end of the show asking how we get our kids to sound like that. And I just said, we stop a lot. We just stop a lot. If we're in the warm-up arcs before we go to ensemble and we're playing concert F and the tubers are playing out of tune, or the euphoniums are using too much tongue, or we have trumpet players not making it all the way to one, we stop. And we quote unquote call them out for it, right? We give them the corrective tissue, and it's better. And we just don't let the kids get away with a lot. And we hold them to really, really, really high standards. And I think that's been our secret sauce here.
My principal gave me a good thing on that, is that you're not calling them out. They called themselves out. And so that actually kind of flipped my switch. I'm like, oh my goodness, you're right. You're not picking on the child. Again, it's like, it's one of those things that little changed my mindset a little bit last year. It caught me off guard. I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. It's not that you're picking on any individual. It's that they kind of showed where they're at in the learning process.
Sure.
By what they don't know. And again, this goes back to, like, I have to own every mistake. So even though it's their mistake, I own it. What did I do? And going back to, but that's one of the audience members. I love to collect, like, what do you do for fundamentals? And I'm like, talking to our audience, do you have fundamentals that you've written? There's some fantastic fundamentals. There's books, there's people, and I know some directors around here in the Pacific Northwest that have written some incredible packets. And we're all looking for that magic. So, like, if you have a packet that works, I always like to share people. My band programs came alive when I felt focused on the fundamentals. It was the odd thing. The less, and it's not, don't take this out of context, my audience. The less I worked on music and the more I worked on fundamentals, the more music we learned.
Yeah.
And I had to learn that fixing the thing is what made the music. Working on that piece of music only fixed that piece of music, but fixing everything that happened to the music is what started to fix that.
Absolutely. I think that one challenge I have for a lot of people, and they ask what fundamentals we're doing, and I think the what is important, but I think the way that you teach through it is more important. I think that the best teacher, and again, David Adel just had an example. I think if David was shackled to, you can only teach fundamentals through concert F, he's going to do a million times more than a mediocre band director playing a full packet. And that's just what I believe. And how stubborn are you to the fundamental things? Because if your band's playing with too much tongue on concert F and you get that radio static noise before concert F, they're going to do that on every single note of the show. And how many notes in the show or in your concert festival literature do you have? It's going to sound like you're listening to a really crappy radio station. Yeah.
Patrick, can you put that quote back up for me? Patrick's are backwards. How you do this. Kyle Gray says, how you do the small things is how you will do all things. Concert F for the win. That was great.
Sure.
So let's move on to the community part of it, because that's really, like I said, culture is not necessarily a thing. It really is a belief system that we have of who we are, who our bands are, our families are. Any culture defines itself, but community to me is kind of one of the biggest secrets. And you're a huge on community building, and so, like, I always, how do you, what are some of the things that you do to make your kids feel like they belong? Do you have, and even maybe your leadership structure of your school, student leadership? I mean, it's obvious you have staff leadership. Do you have separate staff leadership for the student leadership? But what kind of, talk about your community?
I think that the most important thing to remember in terms of community and really culture building as a package is, there are some people that believe, again, this podcast is called Culture Before Content, but culture and content don't live in separate spaces. They're so intimately intertwined. And when you're talking about band directors, like, and band programs, most of our time is spent in rehearsal. Most of your time isn't spent at a band banquet. And band banquets are super important, and they're super important to our culture. But if you took the band banquet away from Bartlett High School, the culture's going to be pretty much the same. So you have to make sure that the environment of your rehearsal is conducive of the culture that you're trying to build. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be sunshine, flowers, and rainbows all the time. And at Bartlett, it's certainly not. Just it's the little, like, most inconspicuous moments that make culture. So one thing that, again, I picked up at Franklin when I was on staff there, is if someone did something, I won't even say well, but if someone did something that was an improvement, David would have the kids clap for them. And so that's something I started really early here at Bartlett. And it was interesting last week, again, one of the college kids that's working camp, I didn't say anything. The field just erupted into applause. And so in my head, I'm like, oh, okay, well, either a staff member must have paid someone a compliment, but that kid was standing right next to me, and he looks at me and he's like, "What happened? What was that about?" And I said, "I think someone just did something good and we're celebrating it." So that's something huge here that we do. I know there's other programs that do that we celebrate small successes. If I say from the box, "Hey, Avery, you did a great job of, just getting your feet in time on that rep." I don't have to ask for it. The kids are going to clap for them. And it's not just about those visual times either, but how many other times in the course of a rehearsal is a section leader walking up to a freshman and patting them on the back and saying, "Hey, that was a good job on that set," or, "Hey, you sounded really good that rep." And I think that all starts from sort of the big visual and almost maybe a little bit sarcastic of, "Hey, let's all clap for Jimmy because he just played a really great concert F." So that's one thing that we do. I think another part of it is we're really adamant about making sure all the kids are successful, no matter how they come to us, how great they are, how not great they are when they come to us. So we have ability split groups here at Bartlett. There are years that, especially in the freshman classes, we have to ability split even within the groups because there might be 6, 7 kids who can't do what everybody else is doing. And that starts with, we're fortunate enough in our district that there's always more than one person in the class. And so we're able to do stuff like that. And then knowing how much a kid can handle and making sure we're not asking too much of a particular kid. So I just think those are some of the things that, again, it's not the big banquet, but it's the threads that run through the program constantly that make it up. And then, of course, everybody has a band banquet. I'm really proud of my wife, again, who's one of the other band directors. The banquet's kind of her baby. She's sort of the culture master as far as the banquet's concerned, really as far as a lot of things are concerned. So at the band banquet, we celebrate exceptional members. We make sure that we're spreading the wealth in the awards, even if the best person in the program, best marcher, best sophomore, best brass player, we don't give that one kid all the rewards. We try to reward lots of people. And then we also spend some time sort of poking fun and letting our hair down and things like that too. So like most likely to set up their coordinate on the wrong side of the field and have no idea. We love that one.
Oh. Well, Maddie Chapman says, having graduated from Bartlett High School band, I can attest to having good staff can have a large hand in the students feeling appreciated. I agree. What is one thing that your students have done in your past that made you feel good, Mr. Rundell? What's something that caught you off guard or something you remember? What was one of those moments that your kids just made you feel good?
Not necessarily something that was done for me, but I remember coming off the field in 2022 at Jacksonville and coming off the field at Grand National semifinals this past year and just seeing all of the kids sobbing because they had a great emotional connection with the show, but also with their peers and with the staff, and sort of being upset that it was over. I think that's really gratifying to see. And that's one of the major things that, I could be doing a lot of other things, but that's sort of what pushes me to do what I do is sort of those reactions.
And does your student leadership what is your student leadership? I should ask more. What is your student leadership like? Is it something that you start early? When does it happen? How does it happen? How big, small, anything?
Sure. I think our student leadership is certainly something that we have some room for improvement at Bartlett on. The biggest thing for us when we decide on student leaders is we want to make sure whoever we're putting up there, they don't have to be the best players. They don't have to be the best movers, but they need to be people that young people in the freshmen will look up to, and they can sort of see themselves becoming that person. Hopefully in a positive way. Right. I know in a lot of other programs, they use student leaders to teach marching fundamentals or do sectionals, and we don't really leave any of that to the kids. But what we do is we make sure that the student leadership is holding everybody else on the field, or in their sections in concert band or whatever it is, accountable to the really high standard that we're trying to operate at. Even if it's just like giving their all, every rep, making sure that they're there on time, making sure that they're getting rides, that they're working things out, handling conflicts in their section. That's really what we utilize our leaders here at Bartlett. All of those things, plus, is this someone that hopefully the freshmen in their section are going to say, I'm going to work really hard for the program because I want to be like XYZ.
Yeah, so you talked about those high expectations. So let's move to there. Who sets the high expectations? How do you set these expectations for your kids, or what are some strategies that you have to get them there?
I think for us, and again, every program's a little bit different, but I think the most important thing is the kids seeing how passionate we are about what we're doing. And not just passionate about the end product, but passionate in the rehearsal. And so seeing me and Taylor and Carrie and David, who runs our battery, and Patrick, who helps do low brass, and he's one of our middle school band directors, Stephanie, who does our guard. If you have staff that's just standing on the side of the field and they're clearly not invested in the success of the students at all times, you're not really setting a high expectation for them. So I think it starts there. I think the second part is we all have to be super careful about how we define success. Because I think a lot of us, we put in our minds like successful, and I'm the worst about this. Successful for me is being a Grand National finalist. That's not going to happen for us this year or probably the next couple of years. It's certainly a goal. But if you're telling the kids, success for you this year is you're going to go to this contest and you're going to win, that's probably not the best way. And you're probably setting them up to not be very happy at the end of it.
Yeah, I had an administrator give me some great advice on that, by the way. And so, like, my dream was to have my band play at Midwest. That was when I was a young teacher. That was exactly what I want to do. And what I learned from that, and this person is now an associate superintendent, those are not goals. Those are wishes. What are the goals that you're going to get there? And so I started to frame wishes and goals in two separate categories, and that's what kind of started help some of my success. Because it's the kind of the same thing that when we talk about competition, that and sometimes how we frame competition as the teacher is the most important factor. Absolutely. About competition. Because if the goal is to win, then I personally feel it's the wrong goal. Because if the right goal to be is to do your best, and if so happens that your best wins, great. But if it so happens that like I said, if I give 100%, and as long as I don't finish in 11th place out of 10 bands, I'm a happy person.
That's right.
Because that's that thing. So once I started framing wishes away from goals, I would wish to have I would love to finish first at BOA Grand Nationals as well. One problem though is I don't have a marching band currently, so that would make it a little hard. So I have some other goal. I have some other wishes. But so I think that was one of those things that's helpful. So the goal would be, what's it going to take? She started helping me frame it in, what do I do to make that wish happen? What are the goals that would make that wish happen? And that was super helpful. So to get the Grand Nationals, what are some of the what are some of the things that have to be in place? Because at that point, those goals can achieve. But again, I always said that was one of the things that really, really helped me, was putting things into wishes and goals, and getting those into two separate categories.
Sure. And I think along with that is not trying to tackle too much in terms of your goals and aspirations and all of those things too soon. So, don't hang the carrot in front of your kids for making super regional finals if you've never made a normal regional finals. Don't hang the carrot of let's go make a superior in grade 6 when you haven't made a superior in grade 4 yet. And I think the sequencing of your goals and the arenas that you put your kids in is super important. I think that's where a lot of programs can go that are set up really well could go wrong if you're just maybe trying to move maybe a little bit I hate to say too fast, but you're not realistic with the sequencing of things. But you're also setting your kids up. You're discussing and how you frame those things can be detrimental for sure.
Yeah, and so Patrick had just you'll put up your website. So for our listeners who aren't there, it's Bartlett Band T. It's by the way, I should spell this out. It's bartlettbandtn.org, which is BARTLETT band TN.org. So it's bartlettbandtennessee.org. And I want to point something out to our audience and anyone who's also watching. I had the privilege of going through your website before we got a chance to meet for audience members. Today is the first day we've met. And I was looking at your resources and going through your handbook. This is one of the finest handbooks I have seen around, and I would recommend to everyone to get into the resources and find the handbook. You are a very organized person, my friend. Everything is outlined. You talk about, the steps of success, or the steps that outline this is how things, or this is why. I always like to say, if I'm going to hold students accountable, it has to be in print.
Sure.
And so, if I would recommend everyone go in there. Look at that. He pulls it up for us. Hey, now I know your address. And so go through that handbook and look at some of the things, like you've got expectations for rehearsals, look, it's very, very well put together. And I love all of it, because it's, my thing is, I tell people is, I don't have any original ideas. I have stolen every single thing that I have done to become the band director that I am. So I'm just a variant of what was ever shown to me, handed to me, or something that I coveted to have in my things. But I went through, this is just fantastic. For those of you listening, Patrick is going through all the pages for us. We can see, but it's really well framed out, and it's like kind of like Apple iTunes agreement. There's all these words. There's lots of words when you have to read, and it's not necessarily that we're going to read all those words, but you know what? I might be wanting to read about performances at home football games, and I can go to that section and I might take away something from that. But we band directors, my goodness, here's one of those fantastic resources. There's even the financial structure of how it works. That's always my question. And so like I said, but I'd take a chance to go through it, uniform, extra, just fantastic information. So how long did it take you to put this together, by the way?
I think from start to finish, I think I had a draft of this when I was an assistant, because the program, when I came in as an assistant, they didn't have a band handbook. So I drafted one. When I went to Siegel, we sort of adapted the one that I had done for Bartlett with the one that they already had existed. And then when I started back here, after growing up a little bit, I was able to shave and modify, and it kind of turned into what it is now. And every year I do a little bit of editing on it. And then the website is, I can't take all the credit for the website. 95% of it goes to Taylor. She's really, really great with that stuff.
Yeah, that's I say, we directors, if you want to go look at that website. And by the way, for our listeners, Patrick was going through like page after page after page, and we just finished going through the pages. I don't think we got all the way through, but Taylor Robinson Rundell, seems like a familiar person. Thank you, Dr. Eric Harris, for teaching us how to write a band handbook. Tell us who Dr. Eric Harris is, by the way.
So Dr. Harris was the associate director of bands at Tennessee Tech when Taylor and I went through. He's still there. I believe he's operating in a slightly different function now. I think he started like an audio engineering degree at Tech, which I think is going to be the first audio engineering degree that is a collaboration between Tech's like world renowned engineering department and the music department. So I think it started it last year, and he's already got tons of majors. But Dr. Harris is really interesting because he had a lot of schools. The people teaching the classes of how to be a band director and the methods classes are a lot of times taught by people who've never done that, which is surprise. Yeah, right. Surprise.
This is news,
right? But Dr. Harris had 12 years of public school experience. He had 6 or 7 in middle school, and then he taught at Vance High School in North Carolina. He opened that school, and just to give you an idea of what kind of educator he is, he took that group in concert festival one year after the other, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight superiors. And then before he decided to go on and get his doctorate. But he is. I wish I could show you. I could put off the shelf right now. The methods classes that he put us through. Every day he'd come in with a handout, with just a beautiful handout of, this is exactly what you need to do on your first day of school. This is exactly how you prepare for concert festival. Here's a 3-page list of great band literature that you can use, whether you're planning a Christmas concert or you're planning to go in grade 5 in concert festival. And every day was like that. And I wish I gave my band director and David Adelit a lot of credit. But I should give Dr. Harris probably more than those two, because his preparation and training of us, I believe, is better than probably anywhere outside of the great state of Texas. I don't think that you could find a person preparing young band directors better than he does.
That's fantastic. Well, we'll make sure we should find out, and you should you should call him or text him or tell him. Or send them the link to this video. Let them know. I started a music production class at my school a couple years ago, and then so that's one of the things, to be different, is finding ways to capture more kids to be in music that isn't necessarily band. I teach it as a smaller high school, so that was it was nice to hear that he's doing that audio production or moving that genre. There's many opportunities to getting kids captured into music, and just one of those things that accidentally happens is you find even killer musicians at your school that aren't in band, and sometimes they join bands. Sometimes you just end up with some killer kids that are musicians. All right, let's get back to the culture show. So, it's kind of funny though that we talk about culture, because, like I said, it's funny. The one thing I've attributed to you so far is your past has influenced your future, but you're the one that's, don't sell yourself short. You're just as influential. Here you are today as all those people that you've named, and taking that forward. So, what are some of the things that you've come across to how do you sustain this culture of excellence, and how do you sustain the culture in your band program?
I think sustaining the culture, and again, the idea of it's not two separate things, that there's the culture thread that runs through every time you're in front of the kids. As Scott Lang said, the culture comes from the person on the podium. So we weigh our decisions, really every decision that we make. Is it going to further the culture in a positive way, or maybe will detract? And decisions really as simple as, like, who's gonna get the best brass player award at the banquet? Is it going to be the kid who is never off of his phone in rehearsal and maybe has a bad mouth? This is not a real person. This is a person I'm making up. Okay, I don't want to get parent emails. Or is it going to be the kid who maybe isn't quite as talented as him, but he has a pencil in every rehearsal? If I say mark something in, he's the first one you hear the pencil dropping on the stand. He has a really great attitude. He takes care of younger kids. We're probably going to go with that person because we want to see that attitude repeated. And I think that's super important in sustaining cultures. Who gets leadership position, who gets solo opportunities. And then I think another huge part, as far as the stakeholders, I spent a lot of time talking about how we handle the kids, but the parents and stakeholders are equally as important. So it takes a long time to build trust with those people. It takes very little time, if any time, to destroy it. So like our rehearsal scheduling, on our website, you can see our band calendar. We operate inside those dates. If part 2 is not coming together and we have to do it at the contest next Saturday, I don't throw in an extra rehearsal. These are the dates that we operate inside of. Now, if there's an away game on the calendar, and for some reason it would be better for us to stay home, we might do that. But largely we operate under the we mean what we say. In terms of that, in terms of working out conflicts. If I tell a kid in May when they're signing up for marching band that they're going to be able to go to wrestling practice and miss an hour of rehearsal, I'm going to stick to that. And we're going to make sure that we find a solution that works. And then another big thing at here at Bartlett, I know it's like this at a lot of programs. We don't lie to the parents about how much time marching band's going to be. It's still less here than it is other places. We rehearse three days a week. We're not here Saturdays like most programs are. We have a couple of camp days that are on Friday evening so that they still get their full weekend. But we tell them, you know, this is the time commitment. After we get done with marching band, most of those time commitments are going to go away. And we don't, so we might rehearse one day after school for concert band stuff. We see them in class every day. So really the biggest part is they just need time to put because percussion isn't in the class with us. We need time to put percussion with them, but we don't go outside of one day a week, and we promise them that. And now there are other opportunities, jazz bands after school that, you know, so they have, they can choose to do that. But we really try to mean what we say and stick to what we say so that the trust that we build with the parents isn't destroyed, and it can be destroyed really quickly.
Oh, trust. That's a good one. That I want to, share a little story with you about that, what you talked about, because what you just said resonates with me extremely. I was in the All-American College Band for Disney, and we had a gig. It was the only time, it was my first 4th of July. I didn't see fireworks because we were performing at the Hollywood Bowl. Well, the neat thing is we got to perform with the LA Philharmonic. And so all of us did Stars and Stripes together. I got to play piccolo on Stars and Stripes with cool. The LA Phil. A little intimidating. Anyway, my point was, when I watched them rehearsal, there was a big clock in front of the ensemble, and none of us, we're all college kids. We don't know what's doing, but it was neat because we're watching. The minute that thing hit, I don't remember what time. It'll just say 7:00 p.m. It was in the middle of conducting, and everyone just packed up. Like literally, some people stayed, but people packed up. And I learned that day it was the union. Because on union rule says when rehearsal ends, and it sparked something in me. And so what happened was, when I became a teacher, I started doing that. And somebody said, you're not going to get more out of them by teaching them later. If anything, you're going to, and this is that attitude aptitude thing you talked about, you're going to influence the attitude, and you're trying to get the aptitude, and you're going to ruin the attitude. Sure. And so I learned, if marching band, and like I used to do marching band from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. I think they're still on the same schedule twice a week because it's Arizona. It's hot. And so, boom. And I tell this to my kids, we have a time, I have a clock watcher, and that's it. I tell them, because, if you have a school like me, I'm on schedule 74 on day 62, because I'm trying to, okay, what time do we get out? What, when's the, oh yeah, the bell rings. The rule is 2 minutes before the end of the bell, pack up. And even if I'm in, and I've told them, you have permission. It's something for me that worked out really well, because it showed them that I value their time. They have other things to do. They have school. They have to get across campus, all those things. And I've been doing that for 30 years. And that's one of the things that I learned. And so when you say that, it's so true. Parents are upset. We're going to run, the band director before me at one of my schools would hold them 30 minutes late. And the parents would get so angry at me ahead of time before I was even the band director. And that was one of the things that I instituted. And that's what started the whole process. But how you show value to your students and your parents can completely shape who and what we are.
Sure. Absolutely.
So absolutely. I got a scary comment for you. We have already reached the end of our time.
Oh man.
It goes way too fast.
It does. It goes really fast.
Because right when I get to comfortable learning stuff, we have to go. So I'm going to introduce, for those of you listening, if you would like to get a hold of Mr. Rundell, it's TL Rundell, and it's TLRUNDELL music, all one word, TL Rundell music @gmail.com. Maybe ask him about those fundamentals that he does, those things. And as he says, what was the name of your company? I'm sorry, it came up, and what was the name of your he goes, South Coast Music and Design. He's a wind arranger. But before we say goodbye today, and thank you for sharing a little bit about your culture. I encourage everyone to go to the website. I encourage people to look up videos, watch bands, listen, and like I said, take the moment that we learned and feel good about it. What are your final thoughts on culture, band, anything?
I think it's sort of the thing that I said from the beginning, and it's two parts. Number one, what works one place won't necessarily work for your place. But if you see something work somewhere, give it a try. And if you throw it out, that's fine. I think the second part is don't get sucked into the trap where we think culture and content are two separate things, because they're not. The way that you are with the kids and the way that the kids are with each other create the culture, whether you're in rehearsal or not. So those would sort of be my closing thoughts.
Oh, one last question from Tyler Steven. How many parts are in this year's show, Trevor?
So we have an intro and then part 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Wow, I only want 3. I didn't want to do 4. Put in my info. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. You have been an absolute pleasure.
Well, I appreciate it. It's been fun talking with you, David.
All right. Have a great rest of your year. All right. Well, let's get on. Next week's guest is Jarrell Horton, director of bands at Vestavia Hills High School in Alabama. If you've never met Jarrell, wow, don't miss the podcast that week. I'm sure it's going to be an amazing episode. Just what we all need as the new school year begins. Jarrell always has incredible wisdom and humor to share. I can't wait. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for tuning in today's episode of Culture Before Content here on the Music for All Podcast Network. We immensely thank Yamaha for their continued support as our national presenting sponsor. Share on Facebook, on all your socials, YouTube, and I hope to see you all next week. Thank you for coming.